Chapter 1. Her first date in 6 weeks blown to hell. Kendall Morgan pressed the cell phone to her ear. "When do you need me?" She cast an apologetic glance at her good-looking new neighbor who had finally gotten around to asking her out. "Now." Nathan's voice was firm with an edge that hinted at secrets. "Please," he added, probably an afterthought. She couldn't ask her boss to wait. No one asked Nathan Larrabee to wait. She made her excuses to her date and settled for a chaste kiss and tantalizing whiff of hot mail. Promising a rain check, she grabbed her bag and jacket and left his apartment. She hurried down the street to her Volkswagen, not bothering to take the extra few minutes to go to her own apartment a few doors away so she could change. When Nathan said now, he meant now. Her date's curtains were open, so she couldn't help but see as he pulled his shirt over his head. Nice chest. Darn. Well, it probably wouldn't have worked out anyway. It never did. Her sixth sense made intimacy a risk. Body fluids were often strong conductors. Kissing could be hell sometimes. Sex, a nightmare. There were things that helped, but it was always a crapshoot, not conducive to happily ever after. A car eased away from the curb, distracting her. It didn't belong to any of her neighbors. She knew most of the people on the street. With the exception of her and the new guy, everyone else was old. She'd seen the vehicle a couple of times before. It was big and dark, like the ones Nathan's bodyguards used. He was protective of everything around him, but surely he wouldn't spy on his employees. It took 15 minutes to reach Nathan's estate in the rolling Virginia hills. She pulled up to the gated entrance. The guard, a man with more muscles in his neck than Kendall had in her whole body, nodded once and let her in. The entire estate was surrounded by an iron fence that would have done justice to a maximum security prison and protected by an extensive surveillance system. After the mile-long drive in from the gate, she parked in front of the mansion and started up the steps. Nathan met her at the door wearing a suit that probably cost as much as her apartment. His light brown hair was cropped close and, as usual, his handsome face tense. In the months she had worked for him, he never laughed, rarely smiled. He was all mystery and no clues. If she wasn't so busy working on his relics, she'd turn her talents to decoding him. He raked her over once with dark, smoky eyes. "Hope I didn't interrupt anything important." "Just a date." Since she had started working for him, she hadn't had one that he hadn't interrupted. Maybe he was spying on her. "My apologies." A muscle twitched in his jaw. He hadn't shaved, and the faint shadow made him look sexy. He escorted her inside, through the elaborate atrium that led to his library, which was adorned with first editions, priceless historical documents, and rare art. If Aunt Edna got a glimpse of this place, she'd be hearing wedding bells. Maybe that would stop the barrage of personal ads Kendall had been getting since her aunt discovered email. 2 men on Nathan's technical security team were just leaving the room. Fergus stood behind them, his face worried. "Trace the data security breach," one of the men said. Nathan pushed back his sleeve and looked at his watch. Not a Rolex, as Kendall would have expected, but silver on a worn leather band. "Meet me back here in 2 hours with an update." The 2 men left, and Nathan motioned Kendall inside. He took her jacket and handed it to Fergus, who nodded his head as if she were royalty. Every inch the proper butler. "Miss Kendall, I hope you're well." "Yes, Fergus, thank you." "Lovely dress. Were you at dinner?" He glanced briefly at Nathan, and Kendall thought she saw the barest hint of a frown. He probably realized Nathan had interrupted her meal. Sometimes she wondered if Fergus had his own sixth sense. He seemed to know everything. A good trait for a butler, she supposed. "Yes, I had dinner."